Popoff from the Contrarians here, back again with another edition of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. You can see I'm using my baffle here to stop, to help the audio a little bit. You don't get to see my ugly face as much, but that's fine, of course, right? So yeah, this is the show where we are looking at reviews of old classic albums or albums that over the years we've talked about so many times. They've embedded themselves into rock consciousness. But back at the time, like, who knows? What could you compare these to? What are people going to say about them? And today we are looking at a review from Rolling Stone from June 20th, 1974 of the New York Dolls album, the second New York Dolls album, Too Much Too Soon. I love this record. I love the first New York Dolls album. Let's see what they have to say here. This is a review by Dave Marsh, the esteemed Dave Marsh, one of the greatest rock critics of all time. Let's see what he has to say about the New York Dolls album, and we will react. Okay, so the New York Dolls' first album expanded their cult from Manhattan to the rest of hardcore hard rock America. No, they really didn't, of course, because it didn't really catch on, right? Let's see. As a result, Too Much Too Soon is less specifically rooted in Manhattan, though its bluster and swagger are no less urban. Very cool. Yeah, kind of interesting. I don't think the first one, I've never really thought of it in Manhattan terms. I don't think either of them feel particularly Manhattan, but I could kind of see what he's getting at here. There's definitely more, audio stuff put into it, audio ear candy. I think the variety, spans out a little bit. It's a less proto-punk rock, right, than the 73 album. Like I say, I love them both to death. Let's see. Rather than the specifically New York City subway train of their first LP, there's Babylon, the town on Long Island, the Philadelphia soul of There's Gonna Be a Showdown, and the Chinese accents of Bad Detective. Good point, I guess. Too Much Too Soon is plainly about moving a lot and not going anywhere. Love that line. Wow, that's really cool. All dressed up, got nowhere to go, sings lead guitarist Johnny Thunders, and he is aching for release. Just as lead singer David Johansen, oddly puts a cap on the H, Johansen's taunting, "Do you think you can make it with Frankenstein?" encapsulated the first album. Thunders, "Come on, give me some lips," becomes the motive of this one. The Dolls have never lacked arrogance, which has earned them often individual comparisons to the Rolling Stones. Which is a great point. You can compare them to the Stones. You can compare them a little bit to Mott the Hoople. You can definitely compare them to Aerosmith. And in the early days, they were under the same management there. This is when Leber Krebs is, fledglingly getting their business off the ground, Marty Thau and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they were kind of rivals with Kiss and Aerosmith early on, sort of thing. And they are sort of like a punk rock Aerosmith, I suppose you could call them, right? Let's see. But now their self-confidence seems matter of fact. Frankenstein defended their eccentricity, bassist Arthur Kane's chemise, Thunder's feathery hair, and Johansen's New York accents. Man, they were one of the coolest looking bands in the world, too. And I believe, yeah, we're looking at one remaining member alive from that band, and that is David Johansen at this point, right? I'm a Human Being isn't a taunt, but a statement of complicity. The Dolls have discovered that they really aren't that different. On stage, the Dolls' dynamism covers their rough edges, but their records work as well. Too Much Too Soon owes much to producer Shadow Morton, who has shown the Dolls how to make those edges stand in relief against the group's natural and undeniable talent. Yeah, one of the big, criticisms of the Dolls back at the time was they were, there was the drugs and the drink and all that, and they were sloppy live or whatever. But, Dave makes a good point. And I've always been trying to tell people this. The records sound good. The records are better than Aerosmith, maybe definitely not as good as Aerosmith Rocks, but definitely as good as Get Your Wings, right? Both of them. So yeah, the first New York Dolls album is more professional sounding than the first Aerosmith album, but they're both about as professional sounding, and the band is talented, blah, 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 as Aerosmith is on Get Your Wings. Yeah, Toys in the Attic as well. Let's throw Toys in the Attic in there. And Shadow Morton does a great job of, like I say, making this album sound expensive. It sounds more expensive than the first album, right? Okay, consequently, even their nervous attempts turn out successes. For instance, Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff's There's Going to Be a Showdown is of interest, not just because it is the album's strongest cut, I totally disagree with that, but because it is built on Jerry Nolan's drumming. Nolan is the one doll who approximates the standard definition of musical competence. Never really thought about that. I'd have to play these records to really see that or feel that or agree with Dave on that. I've never really, his drumming was just there. It was fine. I never stood out to me as him being like the most competent guy in the band. Critics usually ignore the issue of competence with groups like the Dolls, but musical competence simply has a different meaning to the Dolls than it has for most groups. Interesting. They are searching for effects, and it is to their credit that we only hear the best of them. To that end, Too Much Too Soon makes it clear that the Dolls are not just David Johansen's backing band. Both Nolan and Thunders emerge as powerful forces. Thunders' Chatterbox, which he wrote and sings, is a classic. His guitar work is as inventive as the most underrated of all metal guitarists, the MC5's Fred Smith. Meanwhile, Johansen is a talented showman with an amazing ability to bring characters to life as a lyricist. Totally agree with that. Never really thought about that, but that's cool that Dave Marsh brings that up. David Johansen is a very expressive, thespian, actorly sort of singer. Ultimately, the Dolls remind me not of a rock band, but of a baseball team. Like the Mets, they are rising from deprecation to become champs. I think they're the best hard rock band in America right now. As they say, I can hold my head so high because I'm a human being, a riff-raff human being. Very cool. Love that review from Dave. Let's see, best hard rock band in America right now. So this is June, so the middle of 1974. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. I think this is sacrilege, but I would say they might even be better than Blue Oyster Cult right now in 1974, because I'm going to actually do an episode on Secret Treaties as well, which is this is a review that follows immediately after this Too Much Too Soon review in the same issue of Rolling Stones. We're going to do that one. But yeah, Aerosmith isn't absolutely great yet. Ted Nugent hasn't come out with Ted Nugent yet. Boston Blue Oyster Cult gets better, and then New York Dolls is gone after this album, right? But yeah, interesting point that for a brief moment, can you say that New York Dolls was the best American band? I think you kind of almost can. So there you go. There's another edition of Reliving Old Reviews is a useless tool of confusion. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this review, my review of this review. Like, subscribe. We've got merch. We've got shirts. We've got a Patreon situation. When you join with Patreon, that allows you into any of our panel discussions. You can pick and choose. You're part of the discussion of what you want to talk about. You can come on to the panels and do some of our big panel shows that we do. So you can be part of that just by joining the Patreon for us. So thanks again. Martin Popoff signing out for the Contrarians.